Hello, good evening. Welcome. If you're familiar with these talks, you know that I start them, every one of them off with music from our featured artists. So Zahra Hooshyar has provided this music. I have it here, so you can save it. I actually have it on saved to my playlist already. So thank you, Zahra, for sharing that. Okay, let's get started. Okay, good evening. My name is Faith J. McKinney, and I am pleased to bring you the first conversation of our 2023 Artist Talk series. As a Black feminist curator, my practice is rooted in prioritizing artists who find their work outside of the traditional art historical canon. Through various curatorial interventions, such as these artist talks, I interrogate our visual culture with deliberate thoughts on post-colonialism, imperialism, critical feminist and race theories, migration, land degradation, and the historicity of the personal narrative. Tonight, I am joined by exhibiting artists, Zahra Hooshyar, and the exhibition curator, Jazel Muñoz, in a discussion about the current exhibition, Will I Be Lost in Translation?, which is currently on view at WAL Public Market Gallery here in Sacramento until this Friday, September 3rd. So before we begin tonight's program, I would like to offer a land acknowledgement, stating the obvious for those of you joining us anywhere in the U.S. You are on native land. I come to you from the unceded land of the Nisenan in present-day Sacramento, California. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the City of Sacramento's Office of Arts and Culture and the National Endowment for the Arts for the Seeding Creativity Grant, allowing me the funding to critically engage with artists, writers, and curators in the region. Thank you all for your support. All right, bills are paid, let's get into it. Really excited about this conversation tonight. I'm gonna start with the show's curator, Jazel Muñoz. Hi, Jazel.
Hi.
Jazel Muñoz is a community-oriented Chicana printmaker. She provides support for artists with disabilities through local nonprofit Southside Unlimited. Jazel lives and creates at the Warehouse Artist Lofts and has been a co-organizer for its first Friday art events. She is a board member of the printmaking studio Myrtle Press, located in Burge Center for the Arts, and has organized its print sales and zine fairs. Welcome, Jazel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this opportunity and also to, discuss more deeply with you and Zahra. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Okay, so let's bring on Zahra Hooshyar. There we go. Hi. Hello. All right. Zahra Hooshyar was born in Morgantown, West Virginia, moving to California in 2017, where she later attended the University of California, Davis, graduating with a dual BA in studio art and Persian studies in 2022. Her body of work ranges from sculptural installations and ephemeral moments to fragile collisions of found objects, oftentimes finding themselves uncovering stories of their heritage, community, and space around them. Often asking the viewer to become the participant, she is a believer that art should not only be seen, but also be experienced. Hooshyar focuses on focuses on the Iranian diaspora, feelings of belonging, memories, and environmental issues. Utilizing stories and poems from her mother and father, Hooshyar finds great importance in the preservation of their culture through storytelling, investigation, and imagination. Welcome, Zahra.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm also super excited to talk to you both.
Yes, thank you both for joining me this evening. I'll start by saying I went to the opening of your show earlier this month. And as soon as, I walked out saying, I think I went both to you before I left, and so we have to have a conversation. We have to bring the talks back. For anyone familiar with these talks, I started them during the pandemic. I think Aida Lazalde was my very first the artist that I was in conversation with. And I wanted to keep these going as this active, for me, interrogation, right? And this kind of this critical discourse that that in Sacramento is not something we don't normally get access to. So I really wanted to use this time, obviously, through virtual, but use this time to connect and and just kind of ask the questions and just hear from the artists, hear from the curators. I love these conversations. So let's jump right in. Right. So Jazel, I want to start with you. So how did you approach making the artist selection? I guess I'll start with saying this is the new curator for the WAL space. The WAL Public Market Gallery has been around, I want to say, for over 4 years, right? 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is your first show, first time curating this space, but not the first time as a curator. Is that correct? You've
Yes.
been you've been curating. I love the work that you do. I think I came across your work with one of the zine fairs, and just how you were really activating the printmaking community, and that was really exciting to seeing how so many events and space was being shared with the printmakers in our community. So I wanted to start off by asking, how did you approach making the selecting the artists for this month's exhibition?
Thank you. I appreciate you referencing some of the other work that I've done. I think from my experience with organizing and curating the print and zine fairs, I think it honestly opened up my eyes into what I would like to bring to a space like the gallery. So that was one of the first things that I reflected on is, what do I want this space to be as a whole? So for me, I think about inclusion. I think about, having a broader diversity of disciplines and even just representation. I also reflected on a space where folks can access art. So what's great about the gallery is that it is in a public setting. So there's opportunities for people to come in and view the work for free. It's pretty great that it's a shared space as well. There's other retail businesses there. A lot of them are also artists and entrepreneurs and have been there for quite a while. So I think with all of that, I thought of who would be perfect to encompass all of those things. And I can honestly say that Zahra came to mind. And so I think we met actually through my the print and zine fair that I hosted at WAL. And I was able to get introduced to her work through that. And so it honestly felt very natural. The first time we met, it just felt like it was a very, very easy. It kind of felt like this was, you were meant to be my first opening exhibition at the gallery. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. As a curator, I know exactly what that, sometimes you just meet someone, you have a few conversations. You're like, okay, let's go. The space is yours. But I really love that you talk about accessibility. And I think there's some benefits in that, that, like you said, like people can just walk in. Today I went in Fish Face and I went and walked through the work again. And so it's definitely accessible. But also, I'm sure it will come up more in the conversation, is just how you use the space. Because what I loved about this show is I feel like it's the first show I've been in WAL where it's not just 2D work hung on the wall. There's installations, there's sculptural moments, there's, and even going back, there was this moment of like trusting the community, because there's things there, right, that are still there from the opening, and that was beautiful. And sometimes people think like, oh no, you can't do that in this type of space. But I feel like you just showed them with the first show, you hit it out the park and said, no, we can actually turn this space into something that none of us have seen before. So yeah, thank you for that, for sure. Thank you. Yes. Okay, Zahra, let's talk about the work. Let's talk about the show. So I do want to start, it's moving work, right? Very moving, very powerful, very relevant in the time. And for those that don't know, so on September 16th, 2022, 22-year-old Masa Amina, also known as Gina, was detained, tortured, and murdered in Iran, which has sparked this current revolution as we know it, led by Iranian women and girls against this very patriarchal regime. But you've been creating this work well before September 2022. Some of the work is 2021 and even before that. So could you share with us how you arrived at creating this body of work?
Yeah, I guess so. A lot of the pieces are kind of, as you said, like there's some that I made within the past like 2 to 3 months, and then there's a couple that have kind of been made a long time ago, like sort of towards the end of my time at university. And I guess it's just been, I mean, I definitely have felt like this fire beneath my feet every single day since the revolution has started, since Gina's death. Of like, I have this, I would say, a platform, almost like this ability to speak on behalf of my family and my like people in Iran, and I'm privileged here in America that I'm safe to talk about it. And there's so much that I feel like I feel obligated, almost not obligated in like someone's forcing me to do it. I'm doing it completely out of like, I feel I must do it, you know? And I guess just kind of, there's so much culture in Iran. It's literally the oldest culture in humanity. And so there's just so much that I've always felt very lucky and very grateful to be able to pull from for my own practice, and kind of going through things that I've talked a lot about. I have pieces that are about like the droughts in Iran and about our like lack of water for our crops, and like I'm very connected to that in my like agricultural background, and having a lot of pieces that are, you know, about a lot of the times before really the revolution, before having these more like I would call them like protest activated pieces. But I had, you know, pieces that I made pertaining to like belonging in the diaspora, and then belonging. I feel like I often tell myself like I'm in a diaspora within the diaspora, because it's like, I'm a West Virginian Persian, that like there's not a lot of us, and I've always felt like there wasn't a community ever. I mean, I had, of course, my West Virginian community, but you know, I really yearned for like something greater that I could belong to. And since I was young, like art always used to be the way that I was able to kind of speak and get my ideas across and feel, I guess, confident in what I'm saying and really sure of it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I feel like it's such personal work.
Yeah.
And there's this moment, especially as an artist of color, right, that you navigate this space of personal and kind of representational. And so I think the work speaks to so many, but it also speaks to yourself. And I think I just encourage everyone to read all the wall text, because there are these moments of these really beautiful stories and poetry. And I'm curious, the curatorial discussion, right? Was there some dialogue of what would be shared? Because I feel like you're already sharing, you know, this really personal moment, that you share these stories, and you share like, you know, some of the songs that your dad sung to your mom. And, you know, there's these moments of reflection, but also so public, and kind of highlighting this, this space, like you said, you know, you're diaspora within diaspora. I love that, because you're kind of that hyphenated, you know, you're existing in that hyphen space. So I'm curious about what was that collaboration between, you know, what would be included in the show between you both?
Honestly, I feel like that was one of the priorities when we started discussing the exhibition. I think for me, when I think of accessibility and inclusion, is I want someone to come into the space and not only be able to see the work, but you know, because of the vulnerability of it all, to be able to read the stories, you know, the importance of the message, and you know, being able to reflect on Zahra's identity and, you know, your activism. And so I think all of that is something that came to mind. And so I was definitely thankful that, you know, Zahra, that you were willing to put all that together. And allow us as, you know, the viewer to reflect on that and hold space. So
Absolutely.
I think as you've, you know, referenced, Faith, you know, it gives, there's time for reflection. And so I think that's really important when we're viewing art. So yeah.
I completely agree with what Giselle said. And I think also I would like to point out, like, I don't think I would have been able to feel comfortable to be so vulnerable in the work, because that's something I realized, like, as I was watching people at like the opening reception of, like, I could see, you can literally see the visible reaction and like the change in people's emotions as they're reading everything. And I do want to, like, I genuinely feel like if the curator was someone other than Giselle, I don't think I would have felt comfortable to be that vulnerable, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. She did allow for like a space that was very accepting and welcoming. And I think also putting like a lot of faith in like the Sacramento community, because as you said, it's there's not, you know, it's a pretty Caucasian community, but I feel like regardless of that, like, people showed up and people sat and resonated with the work and like sat with it. And I feel immensely honored and I guess blessed to be able to have been so open and in a way so publicly for strangers. Like, this is my first role really outside of university, where like the people I would be showing work to are like classmates I've been having classes with, or essentially family, right? And then I had to like bear all for like strangers, and I couldn't have been like more kindly accepted, and it was so beautiful.
Yeah. That is beautiful. I was when I talk about curating, right? It's caring for artists and their objects.
Mm-hmm.
And so exactly what you just said, you were Giselle created this space where you felt cared for. And I think in turn that work, it was able to resonate, and we felt cared by you as the artist. And you know, just noting even how you fed us on the, you know, on opening and with the snacks. You know, there was this, and it's so strange. And I was talking to a few people, you know, WAL, everyone's been there, and everyone was like, gosh, something's different, you know, like there's just, and it was this, I think, a space of caring and a space of, you know, like you said, vulnerability, and this kind of allowing the emotions, this raw emotion to kind of to flow through us all. So that's beautiful. And I think that was also, normally I'll do these talks with just the artists, but it was so important because as soon as I walk in the space, I'm like, well, no, I'm a curator, so I know what that looks like and how space is created and use of space. And I think it was a great use of space. There's these moments, it doesn't feel crowded, you know, it doesn't feels like it can breathe, the work can breathe, not just us breathing with the work. I think that's important, that the work is standing there and is, you know, stand in some cases for you. So that's important. So thank you. Thank you both. So could we talk about the title? So Will I Be Lost in Translation? There are multiple moments of translations in the exhibition, right? From translating language and then also cultural translations. Was there a moment, and I say this, I preface this with saying, obviously, you know, we're in America, and Americans can get really, you know, like there's so much going on. And it's like, oh, nope, you know, we have to deal, because we're, you know, obviously dealing with state sanctioned violence also. But I'm really curious about that title and how you approach that. Were you thinking like, okay, wait a second, there's this moment that could be lost in translation? Or was it more of a were you interrogating that yourself? Were you saying like, okay, you know, I want to make sure this isn't lost? Or were you reflecting from this moment of, uh-oh, you know, people may not understand.
That's a great question. I guess a little bit of both, you know. I feel like, of course, I mean, America is facing also, I mean, I think there's the vigil tonight for Tyree Nichols in Natimas, and like there's constant like state sanctioned violence here as well. And it's, I think for me, the translation aspect was like, there's just so much, I guess, for the longest time, like as witnessing how Iran has been observed in America, as someone in the diaspora, like there's so much of our culture and our like identity and literally our language when it translates over to English. Like we have beautiful poetry that, oh, is that your dog? I thought it was my dog. We have this beautiful, you're all good. We have like beautiful poetry that like when translated in English makes no sense. Like to tell someone that you love them or that they're your favorite, you would say the jigaram hasti, which means you're my liver. And so if you told an American that, they'd be like, you're my liver, And like it's these like, I mean, those are the more comical moments of being lost in translation, but also just I think having to kind of, I guess, deal with a lot of like the propaganda that's been put out against Iran specifically for so long. I think Iran has always been like public enemy number one for America. And that's just because for the longest time, and I think still even with this revolution, it rejects Western imperialism, and the revolution itself is, something that's, we'll talk about that later. I get so sidetracked, but sorry. But being lost in this translation of, like, what are we even trying to say? Like, I see a lot of Americans kind of misunderstanding what's going on and why is there a revolution right now. Some of them think it's strictly a hijab thing. Some of them think that it's just Iranians are just over it, and it's so much more. Like for the past, and the oppression did not start with the regime. It started since a while now, and there's just been so much just suppression of these are the people in Iran are like so intelligent and they can't even feed their families with like PhD level employment if it's even available. And we have environmental oppression that's been put upon them for so long. And there's just these like steps that kind of has been hidden because of this. Like, I feel like there's almost like a secrecy in Iran. Like, I think it's just, and I'm sure Iranians will agree with me, we're very like secretive people. I think because we've been so used to like spies being within our own families, even that like, feeding back at like the Iran-Iraq war time and pre-revolution or pre-Islamic revolution, during the Islamic revolution, during the current very corrupt regime now, like there's just this veil of like almost like it's a secrecy in terms of like self-preservation, like not to fully tell everything because we don't even know who we may be telling it to at some points. And so I think just, again, going back to the question, so sorry I get so sidetracked.
No, this is great. Yeah.
Just like thinking about like being lost in translation, and that can be both literal of, as I said earlier, like our words, our poems, or like idioms, they don't make any sense when you translate them to English, and they're so beautiful when they're in Farsi, to being lost in translation of this, there are points and there are, I guess, like issues that when brought over the many like telephone lines to America or to non-Iranian individuals, I just feel like we lose what we were originally trying to say, and it just turns into something completely different.
Yeah. Well, and I looked at the title after I went through the show and thought about it, and I almost answered your question. And I was like, no, it's not lost. Like I understand it. And I even and this is why art is so important, right? Because I even understood it more after your show. Right. And I feel like I knew some things, but there was this moment of like oh, I get it, and I hope that people are resonating with that and understanding that work. I wrote a quote down here that you said, I relay whatever I can to the people here that will listen. And I think that's really important also. I think there are some people listening, but, how, there's barriers, obviously, but you're using this, this medium that can kind of transcend all that art, as an object. And I'll ask you just, from the month that the show has been up, both of you, are people understanding, or is it kind of creating this dialogue? And do you see kind of this ripple effect happening?
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
No, that's fine. I was going to say that too. Absolutely. So
yeah, I've been getting like direct messages and like people telling me like, especially I think of course, like it's like every time that a fellow Iranian American goes and sees the work and they tell me things of like, I finally like one individual told me that she like after seeing me describe as like a hyphenated individual and how that's like how they understand now they can see themselves that way. Like I read that message as I was like mid walk with my dog and I like kind of started tearing up because it was just like finally I felt like we're being able to feel seen in a like time and place that we haven't in so long. And yeah, I mean, I'm having people tell me like, "Oh, I didn't know all of that." Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know that, like I think that's the beauty of having like super informational work as well is like,
Yes.
I feel like sometimes it's, you have to play also, the loudspeaker, but also the researcher. And I've been learning personally myself so much that prior to really the revolution, I wasn't I wasn't aware of so many things, and every day I learned something new, and every day, like, my like, again, the fire under my feet to, like, have free Iran and speak more about its beauty and, like, not all of the evil that there is just it's growing and growing.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think just you sharing the stories, we'll start looking at some of the work and talking about the work. But you're sharing these stories, and I feel like there's definitely, this social media censorship, right? So we're
Mm.
only getting, but I feel like there's some moments of the stories that you're sharing are really important. So I think this is a good segue just to jump into. I hope this water carries you. Can you tell us a bit about this work? Which is amazing. I actually recorded, but there was so much sound because of, right, it's in the public market. So there's so much sound, but water is for me is this healing, it's this, it's,
Yes.
I could sit in front of water and hear water all day, but this, for those that have not seen it yet, this water is running. This is a still of this installation, but can you tell us about this work?
Absolutely. This work was, well, first, I would like to also honor the person's hands that are those hands. They're not my hands, so I feel strange to talk about it without saying that they're my friend Ren's hands. And so I was fortunate enough to kind of put out this poll of like who can help me recreate this piece of an image that I'm sure a lot of people may have seen during I would believe it was like the second month of the revolution of um, not this isn't the person's name, but Firishte Ahmadi, which was the woman who was murdered. It's her daughter's hands, and it's like completely the most haunting image I have ever seen. And it's her daughter, when she was gripping the soil that was on top of her mother's body to cover her mother's grave. And so that image just really stuck with me for an extremely long time. And I just couldn't think of what to do about it other than to make something. And so I thought of what is the most cleansing, most not cleansing, but most, I guess, cleansing in a spiritual sense, cleanse, not in like a wash your hands cleansing way, but element is just water and fire, of course, but can't set it on fire. But it's a kind of a reappropriation or an appropriation of what that image was of rather than the dirt she's clutching, it's now this endless stream. So the water that's coming out of the hands is the water that pours back into the rest of the vessel. So it's this continuous stream that I hope rather, is taking her hurt and her her complete turmoil and kind of turning it into this beautiful regenerative little system on its own. And water itself also has a huge importance in Iranian culture. Like Anahita, this is something like I started learning myself, like as I looked further into like Iranian mythology and like folklore. And Anahita is like one of our Iranian water goddesses, and like she is almost the one that like controls water and brings water to end the droughts and to bring crops and feed families. And just learning more and more about these different again, like folklore, mythologies that I prior didn't know. Just it's just been like an amazing way to just keep growing as like an artist and also a Persian, I guess, Iranian.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can I ask, Giselle, was there a challenge? I seen the water and I'm thinking like, oh, was there a challenge of just installing that? Or was there someone saying, uh-oh, this is not going to work? You know, obviously as a curator, I think about those things. And that's why it was really exciting to work, because there was some risk being taken, right? There's this moment of like, okay, how are we going to make this happen? Was that a challenge, or was it pretty simple, Giselle?
To think about that, I mean, yeah, it's so different. You know, bringing the element that it is an ongoing like fountain. So
Right.
finding a place for it where I think we both agreed we wanted people to be able to be present with it, and for there not to be so much happening around it. Even though the space is, it's fairly can be fairly small, but that provides like a sense of I think like intimacy with the work. So with that, yeah, I mean, I think there was a minute where we kind of maybe thought it could go in other places, but it just felt like it worked best there. I think what helped is when I visited Zahra during our little studio visit at her home and studio. And so she was able to show me some of the work that she was planning to exhibit. And so I was already kind of like, okay, like how are we going to make this work? I think it was very significant and important to have and present it there. And so maybe it wasn't so much of like a challenge where I felt, we weren't going to be able to figure it out together, but I think just not really having experience with an installation like that. But Zahra was great, and I think we made it work. So
yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And the place, and this is why I love this conversation, right? Because you almost can't imagine it anywhere else. Like, it was the perfect place of where it is. And again, I just tell everyone, if you're in Sacramento, you've got to come and see the space. I have this photo to kind of show, what you were working with as far as space. And I mean, yeah, I can keep going on and on about how great that space was. Okay, so this is a work that I, even today when I visited, this was, people will go through this work and kind of, I mean, there's this moment of you kind of transverse it. Like, you're not just standing in front of it like a 2D painting, right? You're going around it and looking at what's on the ground. You're looking up, going back into the corner to like read the statement, and then looking at the work from different angles. Can you tell us about this work?
Totally. This was a piece, this is one of my favorite pieces, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I really love this piece, and I think it's something I'm going to create a larger series out of. And it was kind of inspired, for those that don't know, like inspired through a pretty like racist encounter that I had to deal with. And it's like a joke that it's not funny, but sometimes you have to like fight through the pain with humor, I guess. But after that person told me what they told me, I just kind of like looked at them and I was like, this is like this is like a great seed to plant for like an art piece. I'm going to respond to you through that. And yeah, it was just kind of a reflection on, I guess, like what's expected I mean, this can, it's what's expected out of like an Iranian American, like because I think we're oftentimes put not only in a box by non-Iranians, but also in a box by fellow Iranians. And kind of thinking about like, as a woman, like I have like for the, really first time in a long generation, the ability to kind of choose what my faith is, or not faith, but what my path is, and being able to kind of live a life by my own rules, and not rules, but by my own decisions, and not having this, I guess, like generational and societal like pressure to be a specific way, but there's still moments, of course, like when I was told, basically, someone told me that after I helped them with something, they told me they wanted to dress me up like their Persian princess and lock me in their basement and dress me up like their Persian princess. And it just made me think of like, wow, like even though I'm showing you like all the other things I can do and like the intelligence I have or like the skills I can help you with and things like that, like there's still this expectation of like that we're, there's like a specific way to be. And so I made those pieces, which is like a 3-part poem. And then also thinking about the ways that I started thinking a lot about my mom and her upbringing and her space as a like Iranian moving to America. I'm first generation, so my parents immigrated to America, and like all of the moments in which her faith was questioned or her literal identity was found in a way that it's not the right way to be, and kind of responding to that through, regardless of like, no matter how hard we try, there's just always these other expectations that we will never like be able to reach because they're just constantly growing and growing, and not in like the positive way, in the negative growth,
Right.
Yeah, so that piece has like her hijab, like her actual headscarf, which was like really beautiful and kind of like a moment where I felt extremely weird ripping up this headscarf that was extremely important to my mother and putting it through these American flags, which like I never in my life thought I would be working with American flags. They've never been something I've hadn't been like, that's a good piece, So it was a pretty hard piece to work through. And she also doesn't it. She's watching this live now, and this is when she's learned that's what I did with her hijab. So sorry. but, but yeah, and but yeah, I'm rambling.
No, it's incredible work, and I read that story on that WAL label, and I not very much shocks me in this country anymore, but that was one of those things like you're like, wow, and there's this moment of like anger, but then how you channeled that, and there's this duality, like you said, being that hyphenate, there's always this anger, but you were able to kind of exist in that space and use it, being a first generation. That was great. So I want to move on to a really powerful piece. And I know that you mentioned it's satirical, right? But there's also this moment of like, it's really, I'll let you explain it, and then we can talk a bit more about the work and actually, it existing in how it exists in Iran. But yes, I'll let you talk about this work.
Yeah, I mean, without giving the backstory with it, what it is it's, well, I guess I'll have to give the backstory, but because this Islamic regime is so twisted and disgusting, one of the ways that they entice people to come to their rallies or any type of organized talks that they're having, or also just they give these out to the Basiji, which is like their police force essentially. Is this type of juice? It's a specific brand called Sundis brand, and this was something that I learned through the revolution happening and speaking with cousins overseas. And this was like a little like insider joke that they told me about, that oftentimes they're called like Sundis store, which is like a Sundis drinker is someone who supports the regime. And why this is so messed up is like there are a lot of spaces in Iran that like people are under so much poverty that they're unable to afford groceries. And so what a great way to get people to come into your illegitimate spaces and talks by giving them this like sugary drink, fruit juice, right? And so it kind of came to life when I ordered way too many of those free post office boxes to like ship stuff with, from the USPS. I got like, instead of like 2 pieces, I got like 2 50 box pieces. So I just had like an overload of cardboard, and I had no idea what to do with all of that cardboard. And then I learned about Sunday Score, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. This cardboard is here for me to make a giant juice box. And so I made this huge juice box that I wrote Zahra on, and Zahra translates to snake oil. And because essentially that's what it is, it's like the snake's oil that they're feeding these people, and they're taking it because sometimes that may be all that we have, or it's just, so then I took it, I don't know, I play with a lot of humor, I think, in my work, that even though the previous pieces were not very humorous, but in most of my other practice, I really enjoy humor and playfulness, and so I thought it would be very fitting to make this like Sunday Score Zahra juice, right? And then I realized, like, as I was like making the piece, like, oh, this nutrition label could be directly translated into like a death toll label, which is so, I mean, like the dichotomy between like the juice label for like a mango juice to like a active, or not an active, but an updated death toll nutrition facts is just, it was like pretty hard to make, like another one of those pieces that as I was making it myself, it was like painful to make, because I'm writing those numbers down, and then the next day each number goes up exponentially, and it's like a never-ending cycle that soon hopefully will be over. But yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm curious on the exhibition design, because that's exactly what. So I feel like I have this image up, and you're walking into the space, and it does attract you, and you don't see anything but this juice box, like, oh, it's a mango, you want to go to and explore it, and it's not until I believe it's on the left side is where you read the number, and I think there's a moment in this, down on the bottom right, is the 40 years of dictatorship, right?
Yes.
So you don't really see those things. It's like this sweet, like, oh, what is this? And then as you start like learning and informing, being informed, then you understand what that is. And it was really symbolic to, I can only imagine, like like you said, some of those people, they need, they're not eating. So that's their way of eating or to drink. But there's this coercive, moment, like,
Exactly.
And in the exhibition, it brings you to it until you learn, like, oh wow, this is what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like always, we said with artists, I think all the work is emotional labor, but it makes me want to say thank you for spending that time and going through that, which I imagine is really dark, to write these numbers, and then as you're writing it, it's going up, and you can't even keep up. But again, one of those things, like sharing that with us, and sharing, I would never have known, the significance of that until reading the label and learn that work. So I want to transition to, I think this was very important to me, because this was a quote that you had. Sometimes I just like to make really fun and silly stuff too. And I feel like a lot of artists of color, it's always this, which is important, but it's always this really deep work. It's this deep work we have to do for ourselves and for our communities. But this felt like an act of resistance, like this was this moment of like, there's also joy. I want to make something that's fun, and so not that it's necessarily a question, but I think that's important in the work. And I'm curious if that's part of your practice, to kind of incorporate these things that allow you to breathe a little easier while you're creating such hard, such intense emotional work.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And you said it perfectly. It's like, I think, and all of us, both of us can agree, like there's this, I think this very, it's like such a, like, I have such like a twisted feeling about it, like this, of what we should be making, like no one looks at white artists and they're like, you should be making this art. And it's like, I was fighting it a lot, like during this exhibition, of like, like, oh my gosh, like, should I be talking about these things? Like, is this the time for this? And then, like, why can I not make what I want to make as, boldly as every like white painter dude used to make, right? Or like not specifically painters, but like that's just what came to mind. But and just like why are we put into this like, idea of like what we should make like a hyphenated individual or a person of color of like, oh, I can only make paintings about like, you know, Persian deaths or Iranian like culture. Why am I not allowed to also make pieces that are extremely silly and I'm just having a fun time? And I think that that's something we're not allowed. We're not allowed, but it's often like we're put into a box, right? Like you can't just be a like if you're a Iranian painter, you wouldn't just be called a painter. You would be Iranian painter. If you're
Right.
a black sculptor, they'd be like, oh, this black sculptor that makes work about XYZ. And whereas it can't just have this openness and like allow us to just exist as we want to exist and kind of exist in this space of like white acceptance. And that's something that I've been like dealing with a lot. Is like, am I, like, and that's a question I ask myself a lot too in my practice is like, am I making the work that's true to myself, or am I making the work that is, I think, expected of me, which is something I've been trying to, like fight and really explore and really get to the bottom of, because I just think it's we have every right as well to make whatever we want to make. And yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like, I mean, we can go, we could talk about that for another hour, but because absolutely, you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, yeah, it's really important. I'm curious, Jazel, is there a piece that you in the exhibition that you really resonated with? I know just, I always have those, my shows where I'm like, oh, this is my piece, and I'll check on it. And is there that piece that you resonated with or that you feel really strongly about in this exhibition?
To be honest, I mean, picking one particular piece is kind of hard. But I will say one of the things that I really enjoyed about Zahra's, seeing all of her work together. I loved the small red clay cups, and ceramics is something that I mean, in this space, right, at the gallery, like I haven't often seen. So I think that's part of the reason why I think I kind of felt very connected to it. I love the fact that this ceramic cup has its own essence. It was made by Zahra's hands. And it was actually done overseas. So this is something that traveled with her, I believe from Dubai, right? And so all of that for me makes the piece feel so much more like there's much more of a connection in that sense with those. Of course, all of the work I think I have spent a lot of time just reflecting on my own identity and reflecting on the the fact that Zahra is sacrificing her time to share that with us. And as a a person of color, it can feel exhausting to have to be the person to maybe perhaps educate other folks. So I feel that for thinking about that, I really appreciated and respected that Zahra, you were able to do that, but also make it feel like like we feel welcomed and connected to it. And I really I really still think about that. So I hope folks are able to make it before, the exhibition comes down this
Yes.
Friday. Yeah. So Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, I'm going back for sure, because it's one of those things when I went back, I'm like, well, one, openings, right? There's so many people and like you want to spend time with the work. So it's like, okay, I got to come back without. And then when I came back, it was just this different experience. And I love that you said that, Jazel, because when I think of sculpture or ceramics for sure, like this, you're kneading and you're working this clay, and then hearing the wall label that it, you traveled with it back home, or back to America from home, from your homeland. There's this a very emotional moment for sure. So I'd agree, and I love that you that was well said, Jazel. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we people definitely need to come to this show. There's it's amazing work, and we didn't cover everything. I'm looking at the time like, gosh, I still have all these photos still to cover that show. And also, but I want to make sure like I'm not, because there's like so many stories, right? And I wanted to include those, but I also want people to go and read that and be with the work. Excuse my dog. Be with the work and read that themselves. I think there's this moment when we think about translation, right? That you're reading this and you're experiencing it in the space. So I don't feel as bad as not going through everything and sharing, because then they need to get to the show for sure. I will just share one of mine. I really love this. And again, talking about the story, because especially in, America, Western culture, we're waxing our eyebrows, we're plucking them. There's this moment of like, no, they're not supposed to touch. And it was so beautiful. The statement that you put there, something I didn't even realize. And I mean, if I let my eyebrows grow in, I'm definitely going to have Cupid's bow in the middle. But that was also this moment of realizing like, you know what? Yeah, this is beautiful, and it's not, we're in this Western, idealized beauty standards. But that was, for me, that was this moment of like, just kind of a personal reflection moment. Like there's some things that apparently I'm like, oh, we got to change, but actually no, like this is where we come from. This is what our people look like. So that was really beautiful. So many moments, right, that there's in this show that very personal, but very, very public, kind of this public display of love. I want to, we don't have to talk about all of them, obviously, but I think there was just some. I'm going to keep it up here so folks can read. But I thought this was really beautiful. I wasn't familiar with this poet, and now I I have my notes. I'm like, okay, I gotta start looking at go to Amatoria and see if they have any work from this poet. But yeah, it's beautiful. So as we begin to wrap up, I want to ask all the viewers that are watching, if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I want to ask you first, Jazel, what is next? What's up next for the wall? What's the next show?
The next show is going to be Ricardo Lopez. There's someone that I've been following their work for a while. So I'm really excited to bring them to the space. We recently met, this is one of our second meetings. I definitely try to make time and space to, revisit work and just kind of collaborate and talk with the artists. But Ricardo's great. So I'm looking forward to seeing how people reflect on his work. And it's definitely, I would say, different in its own way. And I think my goal for the exhibitions and the artists that I bring to the space is, providing opportunities for marginalized voices to share their work. And but also it's important to see art and to feel the beauty and to feel good and the joy that it brings. So it's a matter of bringing all that in balance. And I feel like Ricardo's paintings are something that I was very drawn to for those reasons. So I'm very excited. Yeah.
Nice. I'm excited for the solo shows. I think that's really exciting. Yeah. I'm just thinking back, my memory, but I'm like, gosh, I just remember group shows. And I think there's this moment of really transforming the space. And I'm so excited that you're doing that. I feel like before the first show, once you took the role over, there was this like, okay, what's going to happen? And there's this long history of what's been in there. And I think you're doing an amazing job of taking over that space really sharing these new artists and kind of these new ideas. I'm excited for all of the shows this year.
I appreciate that. I will say there will be some group shows because I do think it's important to allow for folks to, to open that up for emerging artists and other folks to participate and to share their work with the community. So, but I'm very
great. I mean, you set the bar high with this one. This is one of those things, right? You do something.
All right.
Like, okay, you can't. You gotta stay up. No, absolutely phenomenal. Zahra, thank you so much. Thank you for your time and your labor and I think just providing the space for us to learn. Like there's this, we when I'm saying we as, as Americans, as these people that are coming into the space, not necessarily knowing, not understanding the culture that, the translation was beautiful. It was, I feel like I understood it, many people understood, the people I've talked to, everyone, it was great. I can't continue to say enough about it, but thank you. I'm really, really excited to see what's next for you. I feel like this is also, you're hitting the ground, graduated last year, like boom, 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 first solo show. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Faith. I mean, I wouldn't have anyone to translate to if anyone wasn't.
Well, and that's the moment too, right? When we were talking about translation, like we really went through this moment of translation. Like, okay, I'm using Google Translate and you, and you're like, okay, nope, we got to fix that. There's this moment of even learning for me, like learning. It's really important for me for sure, as a curator and as a woman, there's this moment of understanding what is happening. And I want to make sure, like, having some space to kind of share. I have a few images I want to share. One, I think just giving space for Gina. I think it's, you hate that we're here. I'm glad we're here having this conversation, and it's because of that, but I'm not even forming my words correctly, but I'm thinking about, right, George Floyd in America, right? There was this moment of like, he shouldn't have had to die, but so much has changed because of that. So, I mean, I hope that, as we talk about the numbers continue to rise, hate for, more Ginas to people to continue to be murdered. But I think there's this really important moment of her work, of her life being illuminated through your work.
Wow. I mean, I think her life illuminated itself, and I'm speaking also a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we so we do have a question. We're going to keep it rolling, but I want to, we have some work. We talk about the personal, right? And I know your dad is someone very important in your life. And I would love for you just to share about these works, which are not yours, but
they're not mine. They're actually my dad's. And this was like something that I recently found out about him again, like going back to like Iranians just being very secretive people. Like he never disclosed to me that he did ceramics since the like 6-ish years that I've been in ceramics, really. And until like one day I was looking at so he still lives back in West Virginia, and I was looking through his house and I found, this little like tea set that had, and I was like just looking at it formally as a ceramic artist, like, oh, cool, good walls, nice blue glaze. And I flipped it around, and in Farsi it wrote like, "For my love, Fauzaner." And I was like, that's my mom's name. Like, how did they get that like that, And then I was just like, oh yeah, no big deal. I was like, the ceramic tech at Elmira Community College in New York. And I was like,
wow,
who are you, man? And, like, it's just, he's like, and that's like another beautiful thing that's been happening. And like through my practice is just like so much like unearthing of these, like, not any more secrets, but just untold stories is how I'd rather think of them now, you know? And
Right.
but yeah, those were his. I asked him to send me a picture a couple nights ago, and he found those two. I can't find the tea set now, but they're sweet. They're really
It's in your blood for sure. I love that you're going through like critically, like looking at it until you're like, oh wait.
and it's like his work the whole time, and I'm like, yeah, well, this could do a little bit more work.
Okay, so we do have a question. I'm gonna add it up here from Genesis. Hi, Genesis. Okay, let's see. Do you consider the combination of actions such as food sharing, running water as part of your artistic practice?
Totally. I think 100%. Yeah. I think especially I like the act/action. That's really good because I think I found like a lot of my work tends to be very interactive. The work that I displayed at WAL was some of the less interactive work, just because again, this is my first time really showing work outside of like a classroom setting, and I've had like individual pieces in other galleries, but you know, like a mug at a ceramic show, or like a great example is like I once had like an AstroTurf covered Honda Civic that was like my everyday car that I had completely covered in AstroTurf because quarantine made me crazy. And so I like, you know, and like that piece was activated by like literally having my friends have photo shoots on it or holding picnics on top of it. And again, like that goes in with the food sharing. And I think about water and you know all of the like actual elements of the earth frequently because I also have like an agricultural background, and I just think that like being a steward of like not only like my mind but also the earth is like extremely important. And yeah, I think there's nothing like more Iranian, I think, than wanting to feed people all the time and wanting to be host. And so I've
Nice.
found that I often will, as much as I can, try to like either feed people or make them experience something. Or like I think oftentimes maybe the art itself is not the physical objects I make, but like the experiences and like the interactions that come out of it, you know?
Yes, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, we have a few comments here. I just want to thank you. Let's see. Amazing talk. Great. Thank you all. Thank you everyone for joining us. Is there anything else that you all would like to say before we close? We're over time, but it was a great. This is like one of those like, oh wow, an hour went by that fast. Like we're just and I will say like there's still a lot more that I had in here that we were at least look at. But yeah, I mean, we can definitely do part 2 of this.
Yeah, I think this was wonderful. I think it's important to be able to have a place for us to discuss the work. And so thank you, Faith, for hosting and being the one to ask us. And so thank you. I think it's been really, really great. And so,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you both for saying yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, truly, I went in there and I was like, oh, yeah.
And me was like, okay, I can do
it. And I think this really just helps people too. I think we need more of this in Sacramento. That's the one thing. I think we have a great community. I think like you mentioned, there are lots of white artists, but I think we have a really strong artist community, which makes, women like us, we're coming from, historically marginalized spaces, and we're able to kind of share our voice and give some visibility to the work that we're doing. It just hit me. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm on this call with you both as as women of color and in Sacramento, which I feel like is really an important and powerful thing. And I feel like all of our stories resonate with so many people in our city and beyond. So I really appreciate you both for just sharing this space. And I'm excited, I'm always excited to talk to another curator. I'm always excited to talk with artists. So thank you. You both have made my night.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited about this talk. They will be coming back. We're going to be doing lots more of these. I'm back in the groove. It was nice to take a little break, but I definitely miss talking to artists and curators, and we will continue to do so. So thank you all for joining, and until next time. Oh,